as is the Pagoda de Chanteloup, the only surviving bit of the now demolished Chateau de Chanteloup. This Chinese-inspired tower is 44 meters tall and, rather like a wedding cake, has 7 tiers. Inside, a staircase allows visitors to climb to the top and look down into the semicircular reflecting pool. The pagoda was built by the Duc de Choiseul in 1775, when he was exiled to his estate for defying King Louis XV. He saw it as a temple of friendship for all the well-wishers who came to see him during his disgrace. This is the Chateau de Chenonceau, and surely one of the most sublime in the Loire Valley. With the palace built across the river Cher and the arches reflected in the still water, the sheer beauty of Chenonceau has made it the most visited of all the chateaux of the Loire. The main section was built in the 1520s, but was later seized by the crown for unpaid debts. It was then given to King Henry II's mistress, Diane de Poitiers, who improved the house and built a bridge across the river. After the king's death, his wife and regent, Catherine de Medici, had Diane de Poitiers expelled from Chenonceau by exchanging it for the Chateau de Chaumont, which we will see later. In the 1560s, Catherine de Medici would spend a fortune on the house, and most importantly, build a gallery on top of the bridge that gives Chenonceau its shape today. She also replanted the garden in a formal style. The Queen held spectacular parties, often at night, and it's said she held the first ever firework display in France. After her death in 1589, the chateau went through a series of owners until one of them, in the early 18th century, sold off all the contents. Chenonceau was saved during the Revolution because the bridge was the only one for many miles. In 1913, the Meunier family, famous for their chocolates, bought the house, restored it, and still own it today. And in a final thought, Chenonceau played a part during World War II, as the bridge separated Nazi-occupied France with the French Free Zone on the opposite bank, and was used by many people to escape. Continuing upstream along the Loire is the Chateau de Chaumont, which Diane de Poitiers moved to after being forced out of Chenonceau. It was built on a hill overlooking the river in the early 1500s in a medieval fortress style, but decorated with some early Renaissance details. In the 18th century, the north wing of the castle was demolished to provide a better view of the river. After much neglect, the state bought Chaumont in 1938, and it's now a museum. 10 miles up the Loire is the town of Blois and its enormous royal chateau, which was a residence of several French kings. The Chateau de Blois was built between the 13th and 17th centuries, comprising several buildings around the main courtyard. The palace has 564 rooms, each with its own fireplace, 75 staircases, and 100 bedrooms. One of the best-known parts of the palace is the monumental staircase built in 1515. It's covered with decorative sculpture and dominates the central courtyard. At the end of this long avenue is the Chateau de Chevigny, which was completed in 1650 for the Hureau family. The house has been built in a rigidly symmetrical design, with a roofline which seems to break the building into 5 separate sections. During the French Revolution, the family had to give up much of their wealth and therefore were forced to sell the house in 1802. But they bought it back in 1834. In 1914, the chateau was opened to the public, one of the first great French houses to do so. Children visiting may well feel they recognize the chateau, because the Belgian comic book creator, Hergé, used Chevigny as the inspiration for Marlinspike Hall in his Adventures of Tintin books. A few miles to the north is the Chateau de Ville-Savin, built in the 1530s for Jean le Breton. The chateau was constructed by the master craftsmen who had worked at the royal palaces on the Loire. This was because Jean de Breton was Secretary of Finance to King Francois I, and also Superintendent of Works for the hunting lodge that the king was building in a forest 4 miles away, the Château de Chambord. This is perhaps one of the best known and most recognizable chateaux in the world because of its monumental scale and distinctive French Renaissance style. It's a mixture of old medieval forms with new classical ideas from Italy. The enormous roofline is a mass of intricate designs of chimneys and cupolas that almost resemble a skyline of a fantasy town.